All right, buddy. Welcome back. How was your weekend,
Boom.
man?
Um, I, I think the boys back home would call it a heavy weekend. There's a pretty big Saturday night, so I was out of commission for a lot of Sunday, but I had a lot of fun. So,
The Sunday
what about you?
scaries. I was
Oh
good,
yeah.
man. I just, chill, get zen, meditate, just stay chill, man. All right, so another news this weekend as well. VMAs. Hello. Did you watch them?
I didn't watch them, but I think it was hard to miss them on social media. There's a lot of people we follow who are buzzing because Gibson Hazard was the art director this year, and if anyone knows who Gibson Hazard is, you would know that he is an absolute weapon with a video camera. So I think that you were the one that put him on to me. What was your initial reactions when you saw the? I guess the thing that I saw was the opening sequence, which was just absolutely bananas. Is that what you saw as well?
That's all I saw. I didn't know. Did he art direct the entire, like all the assets for the show?
Yeah, yeah. So I think he did the whole show, but if you weren't actually tuned into the broadcast, you wouldn't have seen all the other stuff he produced. But that
True. So
opening was going everywhere on social media. Holy.
that guy, he's been killing it, like top of the game since like 2017 when he was like, what, I don't know how old he was, like 19 or something. Ridiculous. Just doing like concert videos, and then now he's like moved into like mainstream, and it's so good. Like I just don't
So
get
good.
how. I listened to a podcast he was on, and I think he started like in his like late teens, and he just like went to, yeah, I think he's a Toronto guy too. I forget. I tried finding the episode, they deleted it, but he initially started just doing like free stuff for fun. He went to a Drake concert and like snuck in, took a bunch of photos. I think it was the one when Weekend came on stage as well. Took a bunch of photos, posted them, they blew up, and then some other artists found him and he went on tour with them. And he said he just started photography. And then three
Yeah,
years later, he's like making cinema 4D bangers.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
that transition is insane for like a career.
Unreal. And one of my favorite things to do, I think Gibson Hazard was one of the first people that I saw his stuff for the first time, and I was like, I gotta try to understand what's going on here because I mean, when it came out, I think it was 2017, I would guess. That's my best guess. And the stuff that he was doing, it was not, you couldn't see it anywhere else because it's not so much a recap video and it's not video coming out of his camera per se, as much as it is like him animating photos and him actually building scenes in Cinema 4D. And it was really like the mixing of the two. There was like it was weird because there was some footage that you could tell, like if you were involved in video editing, you could definitely tell that like, oh, like that came out of a camera, and then like suddenly the scene would like come out of a vent or something and like take you into this like 3D world where people were jumping from building to building. Like it was crazy stuff. And it's crazy to think that that guy started as a photographer shooting concerts.
Yeah, and then he moved to like video where like he wasn't doing much 3D. It was like a little bit of like mixing, like animating photos and then mixing that in with the video. And then he just took a switch. He was just like what you said, blending like animation and video together. And like that's when I think he blew up. But the video that he did for the VMAs, like this one blew me away because it was a cool concept. It was like this, I don't even know what was it, like a paper airplane or something that was like lit up. It was like glowing, and it made its way through the entire city of New York and all like the landmarks
Yep.
and lit up the city. So it's kind of like the beginning. It was the opening video. It like turned on the city and turned on the show. Like the whole concept I thought was like amazing.
It was insane. He's definitely one of those guys where if he posts something, that's a must watch for me. And a lot of the time, it's actually friends being sending his stuff around where I'm like, I wasn't even on social media right now, and I have to go on my phone to check this out. So he actually posted the video to his social media, and the day after, for a guy with 153K followers, his video is already pretty much up to 100K, which is crazy.
Yeah. So I wonder though, like how does like that even, how does that gig even get set up? Does like MTV just reach out to him and say, hey, we saw stuff you've done before, like do you want to make us an opening like the same way you do everything? Like are they trying to like reach a certain, because I feel like his work reaches a certain audience. Like I don't know if I'd show my parents and they'd be blown away by it. They just kind of think it's like whatever, but there's something where like his work I think connects with like a younger demo. It's like, do you think they were trying to maybe do something that is a bit more like current in like the hip hop pop culture world? Like, why do you think they decided to pick him
Well,
specifically?
there's so much there actually. It's so funny that you bring this up because I was actually looking into this a little bit today because I was like, I remember doing an essay for school a couple months ago where I was looking into how award show attendance has like consistently dropped down. And between 2011 and 2019 for the VMA specifically, viewership went from 12.4 million people in 2011 to 1.93 million. So quick math, that's down 85%. And obviously, like there's a bunch of stuff in that. Like there's cord cutting, there's social media taking attention away from traditional media. But I think the core of it is that MTV is really losing their mind share within popular culture. So this is a great situation where you have a guy like Gibson Hazard who's worked with like A-list rappers, Nike, Kobe Bryant. Obviously, he shot Drake's last tour. Drake's probably the biggest rap artist in the game right now. And so for MTV, beyond what they're actually getting, the deliverable. So in this case, it was some videos and maybe some animation work for the actual show. A guy like Gibson Hazard brings a profile that you're not going to get. And that kind of goes back into like positioning. Like we talked in the first couple episodes, like how do you position yourself? What do you do? For a guy like Gibson Hazard, now that he does have the track record of success, I think that he brings that kind of intangible of it's not that you got a crazy video or that like obviously from a technical standpoint, like the video is incredible and not everyone can do that. But at the same time, MTV and the VMAs can also now say it wasn't just a video, it was a video done by Gibson Hazard.
Yeah, like it's his brand has like pull. Like there's something about him. Honestly, I feel like he should have way more followers for the stuff he does and how much time it takes. Like he did the Lil Uzi Vert like creative direction for like his like trailer and just the art in general on his album cover, and it's like he's like broken this like idea of what it is to be like a video producer. Like it's not just okay, shoot this thing, we dress up this way and this makeup and we tell this story. It's like how do we make it really flashy and cool while telling like a loose story through like a strong concept and drive it with like cinema 4D animation that is like taking you outside of like the world. Like it's so like dynamic and fluid and going from scene to scene because he can through animating. Like it's not like real footage, most of the stuff he's producing, right? So I wonder if video production is going to completely switch in like the coming years where it's like you have to mix in 3D animation as it gets more accessible and easier to use, because I'm sure he's using a laptop like you and I have. Like what do you like, do you think he really has like this like super power computer that they use to, you know, make the CGI and whatnot in Lord of the Rings? Like I don't think so. Like he made some incredible work with just probably a regular laptop. I wonder how the game is going to change with this guy.
There's so like on one hand, yes, there's absolutely going to be um like as technology improves and as like the education surrounding it improves, like that the skill set of making um objects and making scenes in Cinema 4D or a program like Blender, which is pretty similar, which I think that from a beginner standpoint, just like I'm not a huge 3D guy, but from what I've seen, it looks like it's far easier. Like Cinema 4D, if you've ever actually opened the program, it's a beast. And I get this question a lot of times when people are like, "Oh, how do I use Photoshop?" or "How do I get quicker with using Photoshop?" A lot of people's common concern is that like there's so many options. I don't really know what each tool does, and I'm not going to be the type of person that's going to sit down and go through a 30-minute YouTube tutorial to figure that out. So there's definitely a learning curve with whatever piece of software you're using. But there's those two things. Like on one hand, computers are getting better. Some news came out I think a couple months ago that for the next series of MacBooks, Apple's actually going to be doing the all the hardware that goes into it. They're going to be making it themselves. So if you are a computer techie guy, you would know that the actual standing Macs, the iMacs, they took a huge jump when Apple started insourcing all of that, all the hardware on their own end. And obviously, if you're I think they're like a $2 trillion company now. Just in terms of what they can do on the innovation side, you're going to see MacBooks get a lot more powerful, and And then on the education side, like I mean, Blender and Cinema 4D, like I was mentioning, they're honestly, it's a huge challenge to take on these softwares. I know just from like your experience, you're a guy who learned Premiere, and doing something even as simple as going to Photoshop to make, 3D text, or doing something that involves something more graphic intensive. Like
I get
it's not
lost.
it's not an easy jump to
No,
make.
I'm terrible at it.
It's
That makes
insane.
me, you saying all this makes me think like Gibson's like a very rare, not very rare, but he's one of few that doesn't share much BTS, doesn't share like process at all. If you look at his social, like is pretty, like his social is pretty like clean cut, just his work, maybe some pictures. And I think like, think about how much money he'd make or like the impact he'd have on like the whole industry if he just started like a master class or did a some sort of course where he broke down how he does Cinema 4D. He doesn't have to give up all his sauce because I'm sure he wants to keep some of that to himself because like there's competitors and whatnot. But like imagine the impact he'd have if he made some sort of like teaching course, or a course on rather how to like do what he does.
Yeah.
I kind of wish he did more of that, but it's part of his mystique too, like imagine if all your favorite artists or rappers like taught you how to do what they're doing. Like it kind of takes away from it, I guess. Like magicians don't, they don't share how they did the tricks.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where I think even like us drawing from my experience, um, saying you want to teach and actually going and doing the work into teaching are two separate things. One of the biggest challenges that I faced is that I think that I'm very intuitive with how I build stuff in Photoshop and how I approach my design work. So it's almost harder for me to take that step and try to reverse engineer what I do. Like when we started first working together and we were doing projects together, I think one of your most common complaints was that we'd be working on a Photoshop document together and you're like, okay, show me how to do this. And then I would jump in, I would go from step one to step seven, and you're like, well, that doesn't help me because I haven't, like,
Yeah,
I
I'd
don't
get
learn anything
lost.
from skipping all those steps, right?
So the funny
So
part
I,
is, the funny part is you'd be like, all right, so we go here, and then you're gonna grab this, and then
and it's
silence
all
for like
keyboard
10
shortcuts too. I
seconds.
think that's such a huge part of it. Like, I definitely wouldn't. I think in my first year using Photoshop, after I got serious and I got a part-time job and there was deadlines attached to the work that you're doing, like at that point you kind of have to learn the shortcuts and you have to invest the time into like making your workflow as quick as possible because ultimately like there's dollars on the line, and if you're really slow with the program, it's just not going to work for you. So I would imagine with somebody like Gibson Hazard, if he is hands-on computer and he's not outsourcing some of the 3D work to other people, which I mean, at this point, I'd kind of doubt just
I'm
looking
pretty
at the
sure he
scale of
is.
some of these projects. Like, he's obviously managing a team at this point, but before that, like, to get good at these programs, like, you need to build a quick workflow. And so that's one of the challenges you look at. Okay, this guy can release a course, but like, he's going to have to spend just as much time, if not more, retracing his steps and like, how did I do this? What are some workflow tips? And for the most part, I think, like, I can speak from my own experience. I think creative people really like doing the work. I don't think it's as much fun to go and unpack that and try to
Exactly.
teach it.
Yeah, like think about how much work that'd be to unpack that. And like it also takes away from the stuff you want to do. Like you're just gonna have to not take on projects because you're gonna teach people. But like that's not his goal, probably. His
No,
goal is probably to make
definitely
the
not.
best stuff so people will enjoy it.
Like, are you saying no to the weekend or Drake? Like Drake tells you,
Mm,
can you come on tour with me?
probably
I'm
not.
like, no, maybe I'm shooting
Uh,
a YouTube video.
no, sorry,
Probably
Drake.
not,
I,
right?
I got I gotta make a master class, man. Sorry.
And
I
at
gotta
that
build
point,
my
I
own
got it. Like we
brand.
were talking about it last night. Like that VMA budget, that's got to be huge, I would think.
Oh, but it's not just huge because like it's an extensive project. It's like, oh no, the VMAs and MTV have like so much reach and they're making money off of it and they're benefiting from it. It's like the whole price and budget isn't just what the work is. It's like who is getting the work? Who's the work for? Where is it going, right? And that all makes I'm sure that budget probably was like six figures
It
plus.
had
I
to
wouldn't be
be. Had to be
surprised.
six figures.
And we're marveling over like the visuals and stuff, but like what's subtly or not even that subtle, what Gibson like kills it at, I think changed a lot of videographers. Like I noticed there's a lot of clones, myself included. Like
Clones. Attack the clones.
Attack of the Clones. And his sound design is something people are absolutely biting because it's so good. Like he's like adding sounds that maybe aren't like realistic to the environment you're in, like these like heavy impacts or like whooshes or like sub whooshes that sound like it's going slow mo. That's maybe not like a real life sound that you would hear in what he's showing, but like it's almost like people like that it's different. They like that it's not realistic, and it adds this extra like layer and like cinematic like vibe to the video. Like there's sometimes I'm hearing a sound like, that probably wouldn't be ever in real life. That sound in real life would never show up, right? When he's adding in, it's like it makes me think the way people are consuming content, or the content people want to consume now, isn't necessarily what they're going to teach you or is the right thing to do in school, you know? Like if we were to show that in school, they'd say, oh, maybe that's a little, I don't know if that's realistic, or I don't know if that's would make any sense there. You should probably like turn that down or change it. But really, like, what do people online, what does the market want? And I think the market wants crazy stuff, like crazy transitions with all these sounds and explosions. Like they don't want the basic thing anymore. So that's something I'm trying to change in my work, is like, how do I understand the rules that I know now, and then absolutely shatter them and destroy them and make something like new, make something different for myself.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a huge challenge. I think I view that problem through two different lenses. On the one hand, I think there is some merit when you take an extreme example like Gibson Hazard. Like, there's so much technical expertise there that, like, if you took somebody who was even 2 years before him, let's say he's I think he started when he was 17. That's crazy. And I think he's only like 21, 22. So that's just incredible what he's accomplished in such a short time span. But you even take somebody with 1 year less experience with what he's doing, and you could take all the effects. Like, let's say that you get a brief from a client that says, we want a video that looks like a Gibson Hazard video. I mean, a lot easier
Oh,
said
fuck.
than done.
I don't know about that one.
What do you do with that brief?
Might want to DM Gibson.
And it's like the other crazy thing is that we started this conversation talking about, okay, so the music video, the way that it was shot before, because that's effectively what he's doing. It's a concert recap video. But you talk about a music video and something with the level of flash that you would get from a Gibson Hazard video, you have to bring in somebody for lighting, you're bringing in props, you may be renting a Lamborghini, like all of that.
Nah, Gibson just makes it in Cinema 4D. He doesn't need a rent.
Bro.
He doesn't even rent one.
The point that I was trying to bring up is that on one hand, yes, you get this super technically complex video that's really connected to a culture in a meaningful way where people are resonating. Like with the Drake video, that Gibson Hazard video itself, it created moments. Seeing the Scorpion on the hill in Los Angeles coming down and tearing down the Hollywood sign, like that was a moment that was being shared on social. So on one hand, you have this huge cultural selling point that you're going to get from the video. But on the other hand, what we don't talk about is that for Gibson on the take-home side, like he's not, like obviously he had a team for that video, so maybe it's not a great example. But when he was starting, right, he was an asset to the artists he was working with because he was a one-man crew or a two-man crew in a lot of times. And you're going to
he probably
so
undervalued
much.
himself too.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about that. Like when you're starting, he did say in that podcast I listened to, like he's like, I just did shit for free, like a lot.
Oh yeah.
And it just opened up all these doors.
Which is crazy because you have, well, on one hand, you have instructors that say, like, yes, especially this is specific to sports, but they'll say, you know, if you want to work at a TSN, you want to work at a sports net, like, you're going to have to be okay with doing the free internship for 3 months where you're cutting highlights from curling or something that you don't like and working bad hours because eventually you can get the job. And then you have this other school of thought that says, never devalue your time. You're worth something. An employer should be paying you for an internship. And I think for people in school, those are two things that are very difficult to square away. But obviously with somebody like Gibson Hazard, it goes to show you that sometimes you do have to sacrifice in order to reach these people. Like I'm sure people like Future and Drake and anyone that's at that A-list level in terms of the rap game and entertainment, like you have hundreds of kids probably DMing you. Like they're listening to Gary Vaynerchuk on the weekend, getting pumped up. And Gary Vaynerchuk's telling them, hey, like, if you want that dream internship, whatever that is to you, like work for free. But you have to realize that there's hundreds of kids that want the same thing. And if you don't have a differentiated product, in this case, it was because they brought in Gibson Hazard brought in 3D and he had a different perspective on video. If you're not bringing a differentiated product and you don't have a skill set that's valuable to them, like there isn't much value coming their way. So I mean, it's tough. It's super tough.
Exactly. I mean, it's like work for free, but I think only work for free on the things you really want to do. Like even to this day, I'll do stuff for free because I'm like, this is an opportunity that I don't want to fuck up, and I need to do this in my eyes. So like I'm just gonna like sacrifice. Maybe it's a pay cut, or maybe it's completely for free.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Gibson did. I mean, he was also at the age he could do stuff for free. Like if it's easy for us as like younger guys in like our early 20s to be like, yeah, like free work and whatnot. But it's like, what if you have that mortgage or you have this car payment or rent or whatever? It's like, can you afford to do stuff for free? And I think that's where people are like, oh, unpaid internships, that should be like criminal, which I
Mm-hmm.
kind of agree with and I kind of disagree with. Part of me feels like you're learning, like you're not bringing value to these companies, assuming they're not working you, like making
To
money
the
off of
bone.
you. Yeah, like if they're not making money off you and you're just learning and, being an apprentice and like trying to build your skills, and I get it being unpaid, but it gets tricky when you're doing work that people are getting paid for and you're not getting paid. That's where I'm like that can't be okay. I don't
Mm-hmm.
see how that's okay. It should be a balance of it should be a balance. Like it can't just be they work you to the bone, which I think a lot of these networks are doing, which is a
Absolutely.
shame. But
Well, because there's a need for it at some level, and there's a market. If I'm looking at a kid that wants to be at Sportsnet, be at TSN, or work for a major artist, like there's always going to be people who want to do that and who'd be willing to do it for free.
and then it turns like the rate it's a race to the bottom at that
Yeah.
point. And that's where I think Fiverr is coming in, and it might undercut and destroy the industry for all we know. So that's gonna be interesting to see where that
That's
goes.
that's a topic for a longer day. I think we have some pretty fringe ideas on that. I wanted to go back to this Gibson Hazard thing, in terms of like practical advice that somebody could take away from his example. Obviously, there's so much talent involved with that. There are some people who are just gonna take to a program and have an intuitive understanding of how to work and where to push and where to grow better. Like maybe you're not completely in control of that, but for this example, you look at what he delivered in terms of the video, and there were small things that made it look completely different. For example, when you're shooting concerts, which is where he started, oftentimes you're gonna get some crazy lighting setups, where like they're on a stage as an artist performing. Obviously, there's some kind of budget behind them, but it's like it's a dark situation. I'm not the camera guy. I'm no expert, but if you don't have a camera that can kind of handle low light situations, that's going to be a problem. And a technical fix that Gibson did that really separated how his video was perceived is that he started color grading with just straight duotones. Like I look at some of the shadows and it's like there's just straight blue or it was like red, and it gave you this vibe that it was shot in a very controlled setting. Like I think my first thought when I saw one of his videos was like, oh, this was shot like as this was similar to a music video, or this was lit like it was a like a high production for a sports commercial. But the whole time really like it was just taking the aesthetic and what was established at the time for these concert recap videos, and tweaking and changing some variables to the point where you can't mistake a Gibson Hazard video from everything else that's out there in the crowd. And obviously, video editing is just one asset, one creative avenue. But you can look at whatever you're doing, and really see, what are the stereotypes, what are the motifs, what does the average look like, and one way to approach that is just trying to make whatever you're doing look as far as you can from the average. And I think that's the way that you can really stand out.
Makes me think, what is his inspiration? Like I listened to Lil Peep recently, and my friend said, why don't you listen to a Lil Peep song and then listen to a Nirvana song and see the similarities? And I listened to both. I'm like, holy shit! Like this guy like was clearly inspired by him, or at least that scene back in the '90s, and has made music very similar, but it's his own spin and it's his own unique spin. And it makes me think, I want to see where Gibson's drawn inspiration and see the similarities. And I wonder if we'll see many. Like it doesn't seem like I've seen anything similar at all, but I'd love for someone to find it. I don't know. Like, do you have any ideas of maybe where he drew it from?
I don't know if I could point to specific places that he's borrowing from, but I've tried to reverse engineer this with a bunch of different people, and here's my advice. So for a guy like Gibson Hazard, even his latest video, I would take a look at that And if I'm trying to recreate the same kind of thing as a creator, I would have no clue even where to start. Like it's just too advanced for me. But one of the ways that you can kind of reduce the technical load in terms of what you have to do in the program is go to his profile, go to his Twitter, go to his Instagram, and scroll back as far as you can. Because like for a guy like Gibson Hazard in this example, he started as a photographer. So I think that you can get work that isn't as polished when he was just trying to work these days out for the first time. And that's a way that that's it's a process that I've gone through with a bunch of different artists that I'm inspired by, to really take it to a level where I'm like, okay, now I can kind of understand what's going on with this person. Whereas if I looked at his most recent piece of work, like I'm just as lost as everyone else. I don't know how he does what he does.
Well, the thing is, you say that, and I go to his page because I've done this before, and like he's so curated and like really has his best stuff on his Instagram. Like I go back to the bottom here, it's all just good stuff that I've like
Bro, you gotta
with
get this
Black.
guy's Twitter account.
Man, I don't know. We
Go
gotta
back on the Twitter. So the Instagram's hard. Like that's a fair objection. I mean, like I think everyone's curating for the best stuff that they can offer, but if you get them on different platforms and like even looking, I'm sure a guy like him might have a Vimeo that he hasn't deleted, and maybe he has. But if you do your research, I think you can pull stuff from like 2016. I remember the last time I looked was probably a year ago, so maybe he's cleaned up the Twitter. Um, but the other thing is that like if you find a guy that you like, another suggestion or idea is check who he follows. Obviously, you have 150,000 people that follow him, but for a guy like Gibson Hazard, I think he doesn't follow more than 300 people. Those are going to be peers and collaborators and people that he looks up to. So you can even take a look at that and see if you can find any designers or any videographers, and I'm sure that you can extract some value from what they're doing because obviously, he's bouncing ideas off them. Like a guy that comes to mind is Jack Bannon. I know that you talk to him way more than I do, but I mean,
yeah, so much. No, I took him here and there
cool
because
guy.
I'm in that little group with him. But yeah, he's another. Like I even asked Jack, I'm like, who do you guys? I know you work with Gibson. Like, who do you guys watch and who you guys like? And he sent me a bunch. But I'm watching all the stuff. I'm like, how do you like? I need to see the earlier versions of like your work to see how you got here. But most of these guys, they just like delete it because it's not good in their
Yeah, yeah.
eyes. And I'm like, how do I see where you started? It's almost like when someone posts something early and you see potential in them, you got to download it like right away.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know
And
even with us, like we'll follow professional teams. I think we were following the White Sox for a little bit. Like you wouldn't think MLB, oh, they're posting great video, but I remember they did a video for Tim Anderson, who plays on their team, and it was crazy. It was a year ago, and it was very much ahead of this movement of effects and flashiness for social video, vertical video. And I remember like the next week it was taken down because the team used a copywritten song, and it's just like there's so many situations where I wish I would have downloaded a video and then I went back later because I was like, oh, I can always go back, and the video just wasn't there anymore. So it's definitely one of those things where you have to keep in mind that like if it's a video editor or a public facing person, like they're going to be curating their feed every so once in a while. So like if you like a video, download it now. And if it's a team, like I know that Twitter is a huge problem for teams using copyrighted music. So if you do find something that you like, don't be lazy. Go download that shit right away.
that it's so true. Like I had that you sent me some like 6 sport edits. I'm like, oh, sick. And I'd only reference whenever I went back to reference, I'd only look at the link. And then
Hmm.
I went back to reference one day and all of a sudden it's gone for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I don't know what it
And
is.
that's
And
the
I'm like,
worst feeling. That's so bad. It's so frustrating
it's
because you're mad at
horrible.
yourself and you can't solve that problem.
I
The other thing
know.
with downloading video that I do want to add is that you also get the advantage that if you're playing it from Quick Player or if you actually bring it into Premiere, you can scrub like frame by frame. And with a guy like Gibson Hazard or something where the work that you're watching is outside of what you understand technically, it is so valuable to just go frame by frame because you'll pick up all little kinds of details and nuance that you wouldn't without with
Yeah.
just watching at regular speed.
Some of the things I've picked up on other guys, like I have another favorite videographer of mine is Benoit Lalonde. This guy, like I've downloaded a bunch of his Vimeo videos and like frame by frame, like holy shit, he added that there. Like I didn't even realize what was in that like 2 frame transition, and I wouldn't be able to find it unless I downloaded and went frame by frame in Premiere. And it's
Yeah.
kind of boring doing that sometimes, but you pick up so much. It's ridiculous.
I think it's tedious. I think most people will be like, that's an absolute hardo thing to do. And on some level, like, yeah, it is. But when you pick up like an insight that you wouldn't have thought of and you're like, oh my God, like this person's using an effect that I wouldn't have even thought of. And then you actually go and try it out and you're like, oh, this does this. Like, I don't think I can put into words how valuable that is to see, especially for me. I'm the type of person that actually learns by doing. And so if you're not going through and picking up these small little nuances, like, I mean, it's tough because you're not going to improve. As bad as that is to sound, as bad as that is to say, rather, it's one of those things where if you're like really dedicated and you want to improve your craft, like you have to kind of take it the extra mile, and really dissect what you're looking at and what inspires you.
Exactly. So right now I'm gonna go download that VMA video, download
Yeah, download
Cinema
that Twitter
4D.
video because you never know. Maybe it comes down.
You never know, maybe MTV, says it's ours and they take it down for some reason. But yeah, that's the episode, guys. I think we talked enough about Gibson Hazard. Peace.
Take care.